Well, you may have guessed that it is question number 3 that we are going to be addressing. I'll ask the judges to introduce themselves, and then you, and then we'll read the question, and then we'll be off.
I'm Steve Franczyk. I teach political science at the U.S. Naval Academy.
Good afternoon, I'm Scott Kawasaki. I work at a hospital in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I'm currently the youngest member of the Alaska Legislature.
I'm Margaret Branson, Associate Director for the Center for Civic Education. And you are?
I'm Annabelle Dada.
I'm Nina Talamus.
I'm Mary Beth Hasty, and this is our teacher, Ms. Rosie Heffernan.
Thank you. Our question for today. In comparison to other democracies, the American political culture still contains many of the values that make for vibrant democracy, and these may even have increased over the past several decades. Tocqueville would not recognize contemporary America, but he still might conclude that his observations about democracy in America generally hold true today. Do you agree or disagree, and why? Tocqueville said there was greater opportunity and equality of condition among people in America than anywhere else. Is that still true? And what evidence can you offer to support your position? And finally, Tocqueville said Americans sought to rely on their own efforts to solve problems and resist the evils and difficulties of life. Is that still true today? And what evidence can you offer?
The health of a democratic society may be measured by the quality of functions performed by private citizens. Alexis de Tocqueville's insight on American society in the 1830s reflects that the American people measured up to his yardstick of democracy. The values of political liberty, equality of opportunity, and civic participation, the marks of a vibrant society to this Frenchman, were the promise of America's future and anathema to European society. Russell Dalton, the 21st century de Tocqueville, has revisited American citizenship and defends the resurgence of Tocquevillian logic in the younger generation, who demonstrate democratic values through civic participation, such as the increased voting in the 2008 elections, volunteerism in cases of natural disasters, and political protest against what they consider to be unjust war and public policies. We therefore must agree that while de Tocqueville may not recognize the landscape in America today, he would definitely identify the spirit of liberty, equality, and civic participation in its people.
America is another name for opportunity. Ralph Waldo Emerson's romantic reflection of America paralleled his French contemporary. Inspired by the absence of nobility, the existence of public education, and the commitment to popular sovereignty, the prospect for greater opportunity and condition was more apparent in America than in any other nation at that time. While the American people served as the muse for these two great writers, their inspirations continue to distinguish our nation from other democracies. Although many countries have shouted America, in rejecting inherited nobility, in providing public education, and in adopting democratic principles in their constitutions, they have merely paved the pathways for democracy, but have not paved the people's hearts. The Bill of Rights, Civil Rights and Americans with Disabilities Acts, mandated school attendance, need-based scholarship opportunities, universal suffrage, and federalism are merely some examples of why the tired, poor, and homeless still see America as the land of opportunity.
The inspirational words of President John F. Kennedy, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country," demonstrate how Americans are still predominantly self-reliant in solving their own problems. In addressing and redressing societal ills, Americans have formed crime watches, adopted highways, fostered children, and have offered pro bono services. In relying on their own efforts to solve problems, Americans volunteer and make donations to organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, the American Red Cross, and local soup kitchens. Although there are times that necessitate governmental involvement, a self-driven civil society is seen in policies such as mandated service hours for high school graduation and governmental incentives for personal donations to charities and participation in organizations such as AmeriCorps. America's civil engagement is among the highest in the world. Her government promotes it, her citizens embody it, and together they reflect the words of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. There is nothing wrong with America that freedom, intelligence, and the energy of her citizens cannot cure.
Thank you very much. I'll start. You mentioned civic participation, and I'd like you to address why do you think it is that voter turnouts, especially in local elections, are so low? And if that's the case, then do we really have a vibrant democracy then?
In Russell Dalton's book, The Good Citizen, he especially showed that Americans, even though that we do have a definite low voter turnout, especially compared to other democracies, that we still, especially the younger generation, have the qualities that make for vibrant democracy, such as participation, and through using our First Amendment rights, such as petition, press, assembly, that we are that we have the society and the citizens that are most vibrantly democratic.
It is, in an essence, by not voting, you're making your voice heard because you're not condoning what candidates are running. And also, in other democracies, the reason why the voting turnout is so high is because they have mandated voting. Whereas in America, we have the opportunity to vote or not to vote.
The passive consent is what my colleague was referring to, that in not voting in these off-year elections or in local communities, one is simply consenting to the runnings of government without voting, which is not necessarily a good substitute for civic participation, but it's the reality in that many Americans do not feel the need to go out and vote, but they feel more of a need to participate in government and to donate their time to organizations.
Additionally, in Russell Dalton's book, he showed how even civic participation and using your First Amendment rights usually grants and fosters a citizenry that is more civically engaged and would vote even more.